Hey, good morning. Did you know that the opioid epidemic was caused by racism? True story. You see, doctors would often underprescribe pain medications to black people because one, they thought we feel less pain than white people, and two, that we only wanted the medication to either abuse it or to sell it on the black markets. So they would underprescribe pain medication for us, while overprescribing pain medications to white people because they have been taught to believe white people when they say, I am in pain and I need this for pain. Now that overprescription led to addiction, to which some would either hurt their children or their pets in order to receive medication. And that demand for medication led to an increase in Big Pharma's pockets, which incentivized them to push more opioids. And doctors did just that. They pushed more opioids onto the American people while denying that medication to black people because they thought we were the ones who were abusing it. And that's how medical racism gave birth to the opioid epidemic.
And I certainly don't think that black people should just expect racism because white people are going to stop being that way. There's plenty of people that are still going to be that way. But just because I'm white or we're white doesn't mean that we are.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. That's literally what that means. Look, my fellow rice cakes, I'm going to say something out loud that you would probably prefer I kept to myself, but we are terrible at self-examination because we are obsessed with being perceived as good. We are good people with good intentions who do good things, and we know that racism is bad, so we're offended by the mere insinuation that we could be capable of dehumanizing anybody. And that line of thinking right there is why we continue to take L's left and right, because you can't confront a problem if you don't acknowledge the problem exists. Listen, you are not evil and bad because you were born white, and no reasonable person is saying that you are. What we're saying is that it is a problem if you don't acknowledge what it means to have been born white in a racist society. It is a problem if you're not willing to examine the privileges, I know we all hate that word, but the privileges, the benefits, and the means of insulation we inherit by virtue of being born white. And it's not that we can't experience other disadvantages, including some that we may share with Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. We can be discriminated against on the basis of our sexuality, our gender, our physical abilities, our economic status. There are plenty of reasons why a given white person might grow up in a shitty situation. But the color of our skin has never, ever, ever, ever been one of those problems. And if you can't say that out loud, then you're being racist. White folks, we have to disabuse ourselves of this notion that to be racist is to walk around throwing out the N-word left and right. That's not what that means. Racism sleeps. Racism waits. Racism is little things that you don't even know that you're doing until somebody tells you about it after the fact. If you could always see racism from space, then we, and by we I mean white people and only white people, wouldn't have been so shocked over the last few years to discover that so many of our loved ones are big old racist bags of shit. Because one, racism is subtle, it sneaks up on you, it manifests in tiny ways, and two, we never had to interrogate those behaviors because we were insulated by racism. Listen, bigotries of all kinds often manifest unconsciously, by accident, and the only way we can catch it, the only way we can be vigilant, is to rely on other people to let us know and then to build our experience around that knowledge. If you can just get comfortable with the fact that prejudice is an inherent part of the human experience, then getting feedback about it will involve a lot fewer tears and heartbreak. In conclusion, my fellow Snowmericans, to be good is to accept your limitations and be okay with being wrong.
We 100% can take a moment to recognize that we have not seen not one other demographic of women get upset that there is a black girl follow train except for this demographic of women. And I don't care how much they try to other themselves, they are still this. Now, I find it a little bit interesting, and if we look at it through historical context, could it be possibly because no other group of women, except for this group of women, has been able to escape being an ostracized and oppressed and marginalized demographic? So these other demographics of women are not upset when they see black women uplifting other black women because they know what community is. They know what it feels like to not be the default and to see women as the default. So having to have those spaces where you can solely uplift each other because society has done anything but that, could that be the reason why?
Critical race theory at its very basic is the idea that we, through years of slavery and segregation and civil rights, have so oppressed and suppressed black people that it has now permeated itself into all areas of society, so that it is systemic and that we don't even recognize we're doing it anymore. So say you're in a public school system and the neighborhood that has the black school gets less funding because it's lower income, and the white kids are in a better neighborhood so they get better funding. That's one idea of systemic racism. Say you put a white guy up against a black guy for a job. You give it to the white guy without even realizing why you're doing it. Say you put two guys up for sentencing for the same crime and the white guy gets a lesser sentence. All of these, you don't realize you're doing it, but it happens, and it's systemic racism, and it's critical race theory to teach that that exists so that we can learn from it and try to change it. So, yeah. Why this become a political issue? Well, it's because of President Trump. See, back when he was president, he banned 2 different programs that were designed to teach racial sensitivity. And when he did that, the far right said, yeah, don't make our little white kids feel guilty for years of oppression by what we did, by what our ancestors did, because that was our ancestors. That's not us. And then they said, we can get votes out of this. Those swing voters, hey, you want the liberals teaching your kids this stuff? You want your liberals teaching your kids to feel guilty, your poor little white kids to feel guilty for all of the years of slavery and civil rights segregation? Yeah, vote for us, because we won't do that. We won't let them teach that to your kids. And before the comment comes, no, I'm not saying that we should pay reparations to black people for slavery. What I'm saying is there is no difference between a white man and a black man except the color of their skin. There is no difference in their IQ. The only difference is in their socioeconomic status and how they were treated and how they were brought up, their past, their history that you don't want to teach because poor little Johnny over here is going to feel guilty. So yeah, it's not taught in K through 12, period. But you cannot ignore our history. And you saying that you don't want your white child to feel guilty or feel oppressed, that's racist towards your child. Honestly, you ignoring the history that we have been through is what is racist.
All right, so these chains that I'm picking up, these are 400 years old from Ghana. Hand restraints, neck restraints. Wow. So that's 35 pounds.
Correct. Imagine the heat off of them.
Oh, man.
You're trying to kill your wife, your kids.
That's just crazy. You know, and I'm holding these for the second time, and my heart is still beating out of my chest. It's like I don't know. There's a connection that when you pick them up, it's you feel every bit of the anxiety that your ancestor felt when they were put on him or her.
And just think they didn't know where they were going.
And they didn't know what these chains were, where they were going, why they were being put on.
It's diabolical. What's the name of the podcast? Straight from the
It's gunshot straight from the hip.
gunshot.